Okay, so how did you manage to conserve the battlefield park?
Well, that was thanks to the work of a lot of people outside of the park agency, outside of the park authority. The corporation dedicated donated a couple of the first acres back in 1991, I believe it was, and then the Chantilly Battlefield Association, which is a non-profit organization that was organized in order to protect the land there and to interpret the battle. They lobbied the Board of Supervisors heavily, and the Board of Supervisors bought a couple of more acres, and there were a couple of tiny odds and ends that were added in. We ended up with almost 5 acres. It's 4.8 acres. And a task force was formed in the early 2000s, sometime around 2001, and the task force put together the plan that led to the park as we have it today, with all the construction, the paths, and the interpretive signs. And all of that was opened in a ceremony that was held on September 1st, 2008, which was the 148th anniversary of the battle.
Great.
And that's how we ended up.
Awesome. Do you have any interesting facts about the park, maybe things that tourists don't actually know about that would help promote it?
Well, there are a couple of things that are on that land worth seeing right there. There are 2 monuments there to 2 Union generals, Isaac Stevens and Philip Kearny, 2 of the best generals that the Union had during the Civil War. A couple of monuments to them there. They both died in that battle, and that was a blow to the Union Army. And there are monuments there to them, and there is near those monuments there is a pile of rocks that was put up on what is believed to be the spot that Stevens fell at. His son was at the battle, Hazard Stevens, and was wounded early in it, I believe, so he didn't see a whole lot of the action. He was taken from the field. But he returned there several years after the battle with another commander, and they identified the spot, and the farmer who owned the land at the time marked the spots with the stones that are there. General Kearny was actually killed about maybe 100, 150 yards outside of where the current park boundaries through basically a critical mistake that he made in judging who was where on the battlefield. If you want the details of that story, I can go into it, or if you're looking for Mark.
Well, what about Kearny's stump? Because there seems to be some mystery about that.
Yeah, we're not really quite sure what Kearny's stump is or was. There is a kind of I won't call it legend, but there's a story that says that is where Kearny died, but that's not true. We know for sure that Kearny died about 150 yards away, where there was a cornfield. He had ridden into the cornfield mistakenly thinking there were Union forces in there, and he didn't believe his troops that there were Confederate forces in there. He rode in and found out the hard way that there were Confederate forces in there, and it cost him his life as he was trying to ride back out. So we know that he died in that cornfield. There was also a report that that's where his body was laid afterwards, but we are not so sure about that, because we know that the Confederates recovered his body and took it back to what they were using for their temporary headquarters at the time. And Robert E. Lee had fought with Kearny in the Mexican Wars, I believe it was, and he returned Kearny's body to the Union under a white flag. So the stump, we do know that there used to be a tree there. It's concrete or metal imitation stump. I forget what it's made out of. But we think there was a tree that used to be there, and for some reason it picked up the nickname of Kearny's stump. Maybe his body was set down there for a while, but we know it's not where he was killed, so we're not really certain how it developed, other than the fact that we've kept it there and acknowledged it as a tribute to Kearny.
Okay. Can you explain how or who got all this information from the entire history of the battlefield?
Most of this, and I'm going to guessing on this. Most of the information that I'm going to tell you came from researching it for a podcast that we're doing. We're going to create a downloadable podcast that will basically be about a half-an-hour tour of of the battlefield, and hopefully that'll be up by the end of the year. It's written, and we're just going into recording now. But in researching that, I learned a lot about the site, and I learned that mostly from the people at the Chantilly Battlefield Association who've gone before me and done all the work. Right. Their research comes from the reports that were written by the people who were in the battle. There are military reports, there are personal letters, there are journals that some of the soldiers kept, and it's from that original information that we have a pretty good idea of what happened on the battlefield.
Great. Could you explain what you do, what your job is for the Ox Hill?
Ox Hill is just one aspect of what I do. I write, my main job is to write the newsletter Resources, which it centers on history and nature and agriculture and horticulture for the Resource Management Division of the Park Authority. And my involvement in Ox Hill is just another story that I was covering. It's another part of the parks. Yeah.
What about some of your what are the marketing strategies you use to get people to visit the park?
Judy's going to be a whole lot better at that than I am. I know that she does a lot of work with the local media. There's a lot of work with them. It's also a lot of work through friends organizations that help us out, the Chantilly Battlefield Association, of course, and then direct contact with some of the reenactment groups. And hopefully, I don't know, I should say hopefully, I would say, I would expect that a lot of those reenactors and a lot of the people who have an interest in Civil War history, especially here in the county, are going to be back there next September because, of course, the sesquicentennial is going on.
Oh, yes, I have heard of that,
September 1st will be the 150th anniversary of the Ox Hill.
Oh, wow.
The interesting thing about Ox Hill is in and of itself, other than for the people who died on the field, in and of itself, it's not a significant battle and turning point or moment in the Civil War, but its location and what could have been on that day is pretty significant. It could have been pretty awesome. It's significant to Fairfax County in that it was the only major battle that was fought in the county. One of the reasons for that is because Washington was, well, it wasn't at the beginning of the war, but it came the most protected city in the world, because when troops started reporting at the beginning of the Civil War, they had nothing to do in Washington, so they were set to work building a series of forts, and we ended up with like 68 forts, I think it was, and 93 other fortifications around the city of Washington, and it was extremely well barricaded. And the Confederates simply weren't going to be able to overrun the city because of those protections. Ox Hill occurred because the Confederates were able to draw Pope's army out of Washington, D.C. when they attacked some soldiers on the Warrenton Turnpike. They drew those soldiers out of Washington. That led to the Second Battle of Bull Run, and the Confederates won Second Manassas, and they drove the Union Army back. Robert E. Lee sent Stonewall Jackson on a march around the retreating Union